The Leopard's Spots, a romance of the white man's burden by Thomas Dixon Jr. Thomas Dixon Jr. was born in 1864 in Raleigh, North Carolina, a year before the war ended. Between 1902 and 1939, he published 22 novels. He was educated at Wake Forest and Johns Hopkins. Dixon was a lawyer, state legislator, preacher, novelist, playwright, actor, lecturer, and movie producer. Dixon is among the most dated and most contemporary of Southern writers. Thomas argued for three interrelated beliefs still current in Southern life: the need for racial purity, the sanctity of the family centered on a traditional wife and mother, and the evil of socialism. In the first years of the 20th century, the name of Thomas Dixon Jr. could have been found at the least compiled. The historical novel and his books were the first to which the modern term bestseller companies of his day bid for publishing his books. However, no major publishing of modern times could dare to print a book such as this one, The Leopard's Spots. Even today, few public libraries could be displaying any of his books on their shelves, as they sadly and unfortunately, his name has been associated to censorship and has been eradicated from every modern text, book of American literature. For many, this author, Thomas Dixon Jr., presented the truth in the front of novels, so pleasing to read that modern citizens of all ages enjoy them thoroughly. He died in Raleigh on April 3, 1946, and at this time Dixon was relatively penniless. His works sank into deep obscurity. This novel, The Leopard's Spots, consists of 3 books. In Book 1 of the novel begins with the times and wounded Southern soldiers returning to their home of Hambright, North Carolina, after the devastating Confederate surrender in 1865, and follows these veterans through the first years of Reconstruction. The story continued on this first book shapes the novel's main characters and their views on race. Following the Civil War, many African Americans in Hambright, the fictional town in which the story develops, gained political and social power with the help of Simon Legree and Tim Selby, 2 names that symbolize the vile and despotic partnership of opportunistic white liberals and power-hungry black men. Legree and Selby's plan is to take over as much land as possible in Hambright under the guise of legal seizure of unpaid taxes and redistribute it to black residents. Selby's threat, however, causes Reverend Durham and other town leaders to strike back, and they create the Ku Klux Klan, KKK. The KKK lynches Selby, forces Legree to go north, and wields enough control to impeach North Carolina's governor, as well remove other corrupt Republican politicians. Book 2 begins over 20 years after the close of Book 1. The Republican Party is again threatening to take control of the state and expand African American rights, and another white girl is kidnapped by a black man in Hambright. The protagonist, Charlie Gaston, is a struggling attorney and aspiring politician who has been raised by the Durham family since his mother's death. With the passing of years, he gains celebrity as a passionate and persuasive orator and travels the state to spread his gospel of white supremacy. When Gaston attends the North Carolina State Democratic Convention, he gives a rousing speech on the future of the party. His speech sways the party leadership to his position, and they not only amend the party platform but also choose Gaston as their nominee for governor, guaranteeing the success of his policies. Despite the importance of politics in his first novel, Dixon closes his novel with a successful resolution of the courtship between Gaston and Sally Wade, the daughter of a Confederate hero. With this novel, The Leopard's Spots, Dixon sought in part to correct what he perceived as gross misinterpretations of the South in literary works, primarily in Harriet Beecher Stowe's 1852 novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, which even 50 years after its publication was still widely read. Stowe's landmark novel had long been a source of ire. Southerners, and Dixon felt that her sympathetic portrayal of African American demanded revision. Dixon takes the names of Stowe's characters for several of his own. Dixon's reworking of Stowe's title character Tom makes him not a humble African-American servant but a poor Christian whose family is victimized by black men. Dixon takes the critique of slavery offered by Stowe and re-examines it from the perspective of the Reconstruction era. South and argues that key primarily threat to American value is racial equality. This novel, The Leopard's Spots, is remarkable in its way as Uncle Tom's Cabin was when it first appeared. That book gave a picture of the Negro sufferings from the northern point of view. Dixon's book gives the southern point of view of the same question, and as striking as Mrs. Stowe's book, no matter what may be the reader's opinion about the race problem, it is certainly right that an adequate presentation of the southern view in the form of fiction, which is easy to read and which carries conviction people who have not known the facts. The novel offers a very unreconstructed account of Reconstruction, in which the villains are Simon Legree, northern liberals, and emancipated slaves, and the hero is the Ku Klux Klan. The list of characters includes portions of the Stowe's own characters. However, Dixon is to depict the black as a savage beast, a threat to white women and American civilization. Dixon's Tom is a poor white Christian whose daughters both die because his novel, although hateful and infamous, it is very popular with American readers, North and South. This novel was so popular that it sold about 200,000 copies in 1902 and led to two other novels that makes the trilogy The Klansman and The Traitor, whose ultimate trilogy is known as the Klan's Trilogy. The evidence suggests many of the same Americans who enjoyed Uncle Tom's Cabin enjoyed also Dixon's reactionary sequel to its story, The Leopard's Spots. This novel is widely recognized and accepted as a worthy successor to Uncle Tom's Cabin. Understanding the American South. Thanks for watching.